Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Hammer, an Umpire podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Weber. Glad to have you back. I know it's been a while since I've had a full episode. My umpiring season is starting to wind down a little bit. I've got some trips and things planned. So really by the end of June here, I don't have many games left on my schedule. I'm sure I'll pick up a few here and there. In this episode, I'd like to talk about a few things. One, how to move up the ladder in your umpiring career. That is the title of this episode, as you see, and I kind of go into some details about that. I also have a segment on the new ABS system that they're going to be using in AAA and soon probably in the major leagues, I think by 2026. I went to a all-star game, high school all-star game, and they were using four-man mechanics, and so I have a little segment on that as well. And I know that a lot of you know that Major League umpire Angel Hernandez recently retired, so I've got a little segment about him and some of my thoughts about that and some things that we might take from that as umpires in our own more lowly fields of the game. So sit back for finally another episode of The Hammer, an Umpire podcast. So I saw on the news recently that AAA baseball clubs are making the switch to the automatic ball strike challenge system for the rest of the 2024 season. The ABS system basically. And they have noted that in the AAA games, since the ABS system has been implemented, that about 47% of the challenges have been successful. So I guess the umpires got it right 53% of the time. You can look at that either way, I guess. Nonetheless, this system is probably coming to the major leagues, maybe not in 2025, but probably likely in 2026. It's just a matter of time. If it's not 2026, it's eventually going to happen. There are people that are starting to understand that, the human umpire making calls is part of the game as well, but obviously they want more consistent accuracy in the ball strike calling. It's something that has to be embraced by umpires and fans because it is going to be what it is. Just like we've seen with instant replay, we have less arguments, more plays get called correctly. Umpires are doing the best job that they can, but sometimes when you got a bang play on something, there's certain circumstances that make things difficult. So if we get more balls and strikes right, that's good, right? I mean, that's what we want. I mean, if you're, all of you out there that are working a game, you want to get as many calls right as you can. We know we're human, and there's times where we miss something. And you think back on it, and you're like, yeah, I maybe could have gone the other way on that one. So I think that in the end, it will be a good thing once it's kind of worked itself out. So it is coming. Will it be coming to, amateur baseball? Maybe way down the line, I guess. I mean, we see it in high-level amateur baseball and Division I baseball, especially the Power 5 conferences where they have TrackMan and they see how umpires are doing and rate them out and everything on that. But that is not like the same thing here where we have a system in which you can challenge a ball or a strike. Could that come to high-level collegiate baseball? Probably. I mean, we got to see how it works out in professional baseball, but, those Power 5 conferences likely might move toward that in, the distant future. Will it work its way down to, like, junior college baseball or high school baseball or something like that? Probably not anytime soon or maybe ever. But I think sometimes when you have that, especially with replays, it does make it harder for the lower levels that don't have that technology because people kind of expect that. They see it on television and they, want to challenge something, and then they don't really have a recourse except for the old ways to do that. So we'll see how that works itself out. But anyway, nonetheless, interesting, and I really think there's about a 99% chance by 2026 that we'll see this challenge system in Major League Baseball. And they will implement it and probably start tweaking it as they go along, and it'll work itself out probably into a pretty decent system, kind of like how the replay system has worked itself out. At first, it was like a little crazy and there were some issues, but it's worked out pretty well. And the same thing will happen with this. My biggest thing is there's going to be strikes called that are not called now that nobody really complains about that are going to get called on the system. And, I guess the only thing they're going to have to argue about is going to be, what the computer said. Okay, so, it'll be the same type of thing. You have your challenge, that's what it is. If you argue about it after the fact, you're probably going to get yourself ejected. I'm sure that would be the case. So if you are close to minor league stadiums, particularly a AAA stadium, it might be interesting to go check that out, or take a road trip or something and see how they might go about doing that, see how the system kind of works, read up on it a little bit. I think it's pretty interesting stuff. And in the end, it'll make things more accurate. And that's really what we're always trying to do when we're umpiring. A common question that all umpires ask, especially newer umpires, is how do you move up? And I kind of had this conversation with some board members the other day on the high school baseball board that I serve on because I'm the baseball director. And we were talking about camps. And I know that camps are maybe a hit and miss with some people. Some people are like, oh, you got to pay to move up and stuff. And I guess you could look at it that way, that's the way it is. And I made a comment in this particular meeting that, I've been pretty lucky to have moved along in the umpiring world to where I am now, from doing sub-varsity baseball and summer league games to working, all levels of college baseball, that I have. And some of that, well, not some of it, a lot of it's because I went to different camps. And I've spent a good amount of money at camps. I've gone to 2-man camps on several occasions, high school provided camps, for high school umpiring, 3-man camps in this area. I'm lucky that I've got these in the Grand Rapids area. I've traveled to Indianapolis a couple of times for the 4-man collegiate camp. And, by the time you pay for hotels and gas and food and of course, the camp fees and everything else, I've got thousands of dollars tied into these kind of things. And it doesn't mean I necessarily got all these better assignments, but because of that. But in some ways, it did help me move along because certain people that make decisions on who gets what assignments were there, and they got to see me work. And maybe in some instances, some people got to see me work and thought that I'm fine at the level I am, okay? So it's not like I went to the 4-man camp. It's not like I got a full Big Ten schedule or something. If they thought I was that great, they would have done that, right? So, there's other variables to it now. So it only goes so far, all right? But I've been lucky enough to work 3 state finals here in Michigan. Well, I went to camps in which the people that were making decisions on who got to work state finals were there. And that definitely helped me. All right, move along. Because as someone that assigns baseball, and this goes for other sports too, I guess, if it's one thing to see a name or somebody might say something about that person, but if you see them work, even for like an inning of a game, that goes a long way. And then when you're making a decision and their name pops up, it's not just a name on your computer screen or whatever, or on a piece of paper. It's somebody that you picture in your head and what they are capable of doing. And hopefully you think, yes, they can handle this particular assignment. So that could be for, like here in the state of Michigan, local assigners like myself assign the districts the first round of the tournament, and then the regionals all the way to the finals are assigned by the state of Michigan, the MHSAA. So those people want to maybe have somebody in mind. There's people all over the state that they can have in mind to work those particular games. The other thing is, even if the people not necessarily making those decisions are there might be people that are big influencers to them. For example, I've got a UIC that runs a lot of the summer tournaments I have here. Nick Sweeney, I've mentioned Nick on the show before, a former minor league umpire and a great umpire. And if he tells me something about a particular umpire, good or bad, I take it 100% because I trust his judgment. And there's only so many people that I really trust their judgment on, umpiring and things like that. And he's one of them, all right? And I know other assigners, could be a D1 assigner like Rich Fetchett. he probably has certain people that he really trusts their opinion too. So he might not be able to go see this particular person, but if somebody that he trusts says, this person is really good, they should get this kind of opportunity, or this person, I don't know about them, I don't know what's going on there, then he's going to look at that too. It can go either way. So if those people are at a particular camp, that certainly can help you as well. Like, hey, this is somebody you should give a shot to. This is somebody you need to keep your eye on. That's why you go. That's how you move up. There's no way assigners can see every umpire. It's like physically impossible, all right? Most people that are assigners, they might be retired, so maybe that's like their main job. But a lot of people like myself, I mean, I'm a full-time teacher. I can't go out and see everybody in just the West Michigan area. And if you're a collegiate assigner, you got like a big footprint of an area geographically to try to cover. So that's really hard. So that's why, and this is a time of year where we have camps being signed up for in your particular areas. Hopefully there are some. You need to look at that, and you got to maybe spend some money. You got to spend money to make money, right? You got to go there and try to get better. That's the number one thing about going to a camp. But also be seen, and when you get those opportunities to get in front of certain people, hopefully you'll make a good impression. It's real important. Now, you always should be thinking, whatever game I'm working, there could be somebody there that knows somebody and mentions something good or bad about you, hopefully good. I was just talking to an umpire colleague the other day, and he talked about how he went to a district high school baseball game, and he was very impressed with the umpires, and he called the assigner, it wasn't me that assigned those ones, and said that he was very impressed with these guys, and they did a nice job. And, that assigner passed it along. Do you think that helped those guys? Heck yeah, it did. All right. Those are the kind of things you need. So there's always people there, even if you don't necessarily think so. And so if you're a new person starting out, always assume there's somebody there that's of some importance watching, and try to do the right stuff all the time. I'm not saying you can't screw up, because that's going to happen. But if you're hustling and you're trying to do everything you can to get things right, that really goes a long way, all right? Just because, they think you missed a pitch or something, or there's a bang-bang play on the bases and they think maybe you got it wrong, that's not the end of the world. But if you're lazy out there and you're not doing things mechanically the way that they're set down to be done, all those kind of things, that's going to hurt you and you're not going to move along. That's what it is. That's the way it is. I mean, there has to be a way to differentiate people, and these are the ways that they're done. So you have to accept that and understand it. And if you want to move along, whatever level that might be, then those are the things you got to do. You got to try to get better. That also proves, if I see some guy going to a camp and another guy isn't, when it comes down to choosing between those guys, who do you think is going to get picked? Well, certainly the guy that's trying to improve himself, and he's going to camps, and he's talking about umpiring, and he's asking questions, and he's trying to get better. Those are the things that really make a difference. So that is, I guess, my high horse spiel on making sure that you're improving yourself and going to camps. And also, as you continue to work games for the rest of this summer, especially if you're a newer guy, work as many plate jobs as you can. We've got some issues over here, especially with the heat that we've had, which I understand. Some guys kind of dodging the plate and things like that. But, the way you move up to is being a great ball strike umpire. I mean, it is very important to be really good on the bases in 2 and 3 and 4 man and all that. That definitely is there, and that can hurt you if you're not. But the number one way to move along and be known and have a reputation as an excellent umpire is to be a great ball strike plate umpire. And that's what we all should strive to be. If you can do that and you're maybe not as great on the bases or something like that, that still is that you're going to go a lot farther. All right. It's kind of like, a hitter that's trying to break his way into the big leagues. If you draw a lot of walks, that's great, and that can be very valuable, but nobody's like, man, that guy's got a great eye. Let's bring him up to the majors here. No, that guy can hit. He's getting all kinds of hits. He's hitting home runs. He's got a high batting average, whatever he's doing. Those are guys get moved up because they're a great hitter, not because, they know the strike zone well as far as having a good eye. Same type of thing as an umpire, all right? So keep those things in mind as you're trying to move along. Even if you're more of a veteran guy, that's something that you've got to keep in mind as you continue to progress, all right? And there are times where, you might get to work with somebody that's a higher stature in your area that maybe has, is an influencer to signers or other people, and you want that guy to see you work the plate. You don't want him to see that you did a good job in A, B, and C out there in two-man, and, there was nothing that really happened, and so there you go, right? I mean, it's good also to see how those guys work the plate. If you got a doubleheader, that's awesome. But if it's a single game, say, yeah, I got it. All right. And you'll go a lot longer in your umpiring career if you do that kind of stuff. There'll be a time if you move along where you can be the guy that's on the bases and you don't really have a lot to prove anymore. But for most of us, that time is a little bit farther down the road. So these are some things to keep in mind as far as what you might be doing the rest of this season and getting ready for camps and stuff as we move closer to the fall.
This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Yesterday, I had the opportunity to help out with our local high school all-star games. Here in West Michigan, or at least the Grand Rapids area, we have 3 all-star games that pit different leagues against each other. And everything's like volunteer. The umpires are voluntary, the coaches are voluntary. It's sponsored by our local community college, who's been doing it for many years, and they put it on. And of course, it's good for the local college coaches because they can come see some of these players, and they're usually players that made all conference for their respective leagues and such. So I was asked to go out and help with the umpires and volunteer my time to do that because they're working 4-man. And here in the state of Michigan, we pretty much work all 2-man until you get to the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. They used to work 3-man many years ago, but now there's no 3-man in the state tournament for MHSAA. I mean, during the season tournament that a school puts on, they could do 3-man if they like to, but the state tournament doesn't do 3-man. The problem with that is that a lot of guys don't have much experience or opportunity to get experience working 4-man. And I can understand why they don't do 3-man for the state tournament because it's a more challenging, mechanics to work than 4-man. It's a little more simplified, and you can have, you can minimize mistakes. If somebody misses something, there's at least another guy out there to kind of fill in the gaps. Whereas in 3-man, you miss certain things, you're in some tough shape. So I get that. Nonetheless, I went out to help with some guys, and they're all voluntary guys, and some of them would like to move on at some point in the state tournament, and so they want to get some experience in a more low-pressure situation. It's an exhibition game. Obviously, people are trying to do well, but you're less likely to have somebody really getting on you if something were to go wrong. Nothing really went wrong, but a few of the guys that worked had almost no experience with 4-man. So they see what they see on TV and the major leagues or right now the College World Series, and they see how people do things. They don't always know the ins and outs of the mechanics. They certainly do have access to mechanics manuals to try to learn things, but of course not everything is in there. So for example, we had a guy working first base, I believe for the first time ever in 4-man, and just doing some of the typical things that you might see somebody do when they first are working that. And I can, as I watched it, I can recall myself kind of being in those situations as well. Cutting in too much, like you do in two-man. Whereas there is only a few situations where you're really reverse rotating in four-man. It's usually with a guy in scoring position and U3's going out and U1's got to kind of come in and do that reverse rotation kind of situation there. Reading fly balls and not realizing they have a lot more time to do that. I had to help out one of our umpires, just lining up properly for pickoff plays at first base. Where you're 6-8 feet off the line, you're kind of in that certain slot where you can see that bag well. You got your shoulders squared to the pitcher's mound and hands on knees when he's on the pitcher's plate. Those kind of things. Guys, I think you can see that on TV, guys doing that, but you don't always really know that if you don't go to a 3 or 4 man camp, or you don't really study it a little bit, I guess, and see other people do it. But anyway, so we had that, but also just, you get the guy in the right spot, but then he starts moving. He wants to move to a different spot. It's like, no, you get yourself right in that correct spot that you want to be, and you're right there. Just stay still and see the play through. So we had those kind of situations. There was a misrotation where a guy cut in, and there was a ball where the U1 should have been covering the plate because, the plate umpire went up the third. There was no play there, which is good. I mean, that's actually the best situation to happen where, if you screwed that up, you don't want there to be some banger play at home plate and nobody's there, because that's a bad situation for sure. You just want it to be like the guy went in standing up, but you should have been there. And then hopefully you don't do that again and you realize that, because that's the way you got to learn sometimes. You mess it up and you figure it out, and then you say, I'm not letting that happen again. Hopefully it doesn't. So we had that. Some guys were working U2, and I think U2 can be, at least early on, the trickiest spot to work in four-man. Not lined up properly when they're in deep B or deep C with their shoulders square, to the respective foul line. Guys want to know if they want to work C or B. I tell them I always am working B. I work deep B all the time. I know there's a choice, like when you have those potential steal plays, you can be in deep C or deep B, and there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But as someone that has come up working two-man and is more familiar with being on that side of the infield, I like that a little bit better. And I know that if you work it to the middle, you can get, you don't get blocked out as much potentially in C. But some guys see that and they just want to work over there or something. I don't get it. And then they're over there when there's a guy in second or second and third only, or bases loaded, and they're in deep C. And if there's a pick play, they're not going to see Jack over there. So they got to be in B on that one. And they don't quite understand that because they don't understand why you are where you are. But anyway, we went through some of those things and explained. I do this stuff like in between innings real quickly. I just kind of jog out there and talk to the guy for a second, come back, or whatever I might want to do. Had two guys from the middle go out, from U2 go out, cross the line, like almost on a routine fly ball too. And I'm like, no, man, you guys just have routine fly balls there. We don't ever go out from the middle. U2, you don't have any trouble, so you're just right there. And like, oh, it's like they don't. I think that's in the mechanics manuals. I'm almost positive it is. But guys, I don't know what they're thinking. They think they got to go out for that ball that the center fielder has there or something. And I'm like, no, you got your wing guys there, and you guys got to look at each other and you got to communicate. Those kind of things. So that was interesting. Also, guys not knowing quite where to be as far as how shallow or deep they should be if you're U2 and you have your routine fly balls. And they asked me, I'm like, well, I'm a guy that's had meniscus surgery on both my knees and stuff, so I need to be a little bit closer to be able to, take a routine fly ball and get myself worked into second base to be in a good spot to see a play there and be where I need to be. So I'm a little bit, more shallow than maybe somebody else. I don't know. I think it's okay to be more on the shallow side than the deep side. I said, if you're Usain Bolt or something, I guess you can be out there by the center fielder. But, if you think you can get in or whatever. So they don't quite know that. Just like with that, guys, I'm usually on the the right center field side, and I pretty much start there all the time. Whereas, like guys inside, when they're inside in their deep B or deep C, they like try to adjust that stuff based on if the hitter is lefty or righty or who they think is going to take the steal play. And I'm like, no, man, just be where you think you need to be to get the most consistent and best look that you can. So that's what we talked about. So it was an interesting evening that I had. Nice warm evening out there. But, I always like talking umpiring and stuff. And it's nice to kind of help guys that are kind of starting, fresh with it all. They don't really have any real experience, and sometimes I know sometimes I forget what that's really like. So I think it helped some guys. I think they learned some things. When I went out to one of the umpires, the guy that was working first base one of my games, I'm like, yeah, your head's probably spinning a little bit, because I do recall that, like when I've worked 3-man or 4-man for some of the first times, especially at certain positions, you're just thinking all the time. Then you got to get that ability to think about pre-pitch situations where okay, I'm going here, I'm going there, and giving signals. They weren't doing that as well. But these are several steps down the road. They're just trying to figure out where the heck they're going. That's always first step. Then, you can give the signals. Then you're thinking about it. Then it becomes more automated. Just like U1, if you're going out for, if you got a routine fly ball to right field with nobody on, you're giving like your hand to your plate umpire saying, hey, you got my touch, but I got this fly ball, or I got a play back there, those kind of things. It's just little baby steps, I think, for guys, and they need to just have some experience working it and screwing up a few things, and then they can get better at it, and hopefully that's going to be the case with these guys. So I know some of you out there are maybe looking for those opportunities to work 3 and 4-man, and if you get those chances, you definitely should do it, and it's okay to go out there and you just got to work it and see how it goes. Hopefully there can be somebody there that knows the systems a little bit and can help you along. And I'm curious to see if you guys have any questions or comments about 3 and 4-man and how you've learned how to work it. You can shoot me an email or put something in the comments, and I'd like to know how you guys have managed that. I know camps are one way to go, but sometimes you just got to get that experience. So anyway, interesting thing, and I just wanted to share that with you. Hopefully you found it a little bit interesting. So I'm sure many of you that follow umpiring news know that Major League umpire Angel Hernandez retired not too long ago. And we know that Mr. Hernandez has had his troubles in social media and in the mainstream press as well, from different calls and stuff that he's made. And he's certainly been the whipping boy of Major League Baseball umpires over the last several seasons. Some of that, he kind of brought upon himself with different things that he's done on the field and also outside of the field, like different lawsuits and things like that. But the biggest thing that I think most of us should take away from this is that Angel Hernandez was a pretty solid umpire overall. I know some of you are probably like, what are you talking about, Kevin? But he was. If you look at the ratings, how he rates out, when he had a plate job, if you look at different things that, accomplishments that he had as an umpire, he did pretty well. And of course, any mistake he had was highlighted more than anybody else out there. There was other umpires that might have had something similar happen, but we didn't really necessarily hear about that. But everybody was looking at Mr. Hernandez under a microscope because of some of the things that he brought upon himself. And I guess our lesson that we all can learn from that, whatever level we might work, which for 99.9% of us is not the major league level. I find it comical that there are so many umpires, especially on, Facebook or Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, that are ripping on Angel Hernandez, and you're not half the umpire that he was, okay? He certainly paid his dues and worked his way to that level and earned it. Nobody gets there without earning it. So you got to give him the respect for that. It's a tough thing just to make it as a call-up major league umpire, let alone somebody that's on a crew for extended numbers of years like he was. from things I've heard, and I've talked to a couple Major League umpires, I actually have, because I've got some colleagues that know them, and he was a great, crewmate. People really liked him, and really good to work with. He had his partner's backs. He would be out there doing what he had to do. So to say that he was a terrible umpire is very short-sighted, I guess. And so I guess the whole thing is we kind of know the term like the ump show. Sometimes Angel Hernandez brought like an ump show thing to a situation at times, and some of it, kind of got blown out of proportion, and he wasn't able to really control that anymore. We don't want to be that way, I guess. I mean, whatever level you're working, if you're working Little League, you're working high school, you're working college baseball, you want to do the best you can for your spot in the umpiring world and draw as little attention to yourself as you can and do the best job you can and get out of there, right? We don't want, sometimes things happen. They just come our way, and we got to deal with them the best we can in a professional way. But, there were some things that he did that kind of drew it that way, and people kind of focused in on him, and that was unfortunate in some ways too. Some of it, maybe not justified. Some of it was, but that's what it was. So I guess that's what we can look at. Don't be that guy that somebody is using as a punchline or something like that. It's almost like now, like if you're umpiring a game, like a summer tournament or something, and somebody starts calling you Angel Hernandez, that's almost ejectable, okay? I mean, I guess on the surface it isn't, but it's almost like can be that kind of an insult, So it's definitely something that will get you riled up if somebody did that. They're trying to say, well, you're just terrible. You're the worst. Because that's what people are trying to say about him. And he really didn't rate out as the worst umpire. I mean, that's not what it was. If you go look, if you don't believe me, you just go look at the different ratings and stuff. Because, they rate out everybody, especially when they're doing their plate jobs. So that's kind of my take on Angel Hernandez. I'm sure they had some kind of deal for him to kind of exit, and that's good for him. He had a long and successful career and stuck it out, and so I give him a lot of credit for that. There's some great umpires coming up behind him that will certainly fill in those gaps that he's leaving behind. And the lesson that we can all learn is don't get that reputation like he did. Keep yourself under the radar. Well, there you have it. Finally, another new episode of the Hammer and Umpire podcast. I thank you all for sticking with me to the end. This is a little bit longer podcast episode than I normally have, but then again, I haven't had one in a while. I plan to always continue doing these podcasts. I know I've been very inconsistent recently in the last several months getting out new episodes. And in my previous little mini episode that I had, I kind of explained some of those things. So if you want to know some of the reasons why, you can go back and listen to that one. But nonetheless, I've got some things coming up here in the near future, some umpire camps that I'll be helping with. I'll be helping with the High School Baseball Association in my area to do their training and such. So I'll probably share some information about that and what I'm doing there that may be beneficial to some of you as well. And I look to continue to do these podcasts and hopefully in a more consistent manner. But, life gets in the way sometimes. And baseball and umpiring is very important to me and certainly brings me a lot of joy, sometimes some frustration and certainly some income. But I have other things going on in my life too, just like all of you do. So sometimes those things get in the way and the podcast kind of gets put on the back burner. But it's always kind of in my mind. I'm thinking about it. I get feedback from different umpires from around the country and sometimes out of the country too, which I really appreciate. So if you want to reach out to me, feel free to do that. And until next time, keep calling strikes.